The 2000s was a very influential decade for anime, especially for shonen. A lot of popular shonen anime series were born that were able to run for years and even decades. Anime series such as One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach are examples in that regard. A lot of fans in the anime community even considered those series as the big three of anime. On a personal tangent, I don't really like nor care about the big three in anime. I look at quality when I see one. I'm not denying the popularity of Big 3, but to me, that term basically meant anime starter pack for dummies. Anyway, back to the topic. A lot of popular anime series at the time were introduced to me from their video game adaptations. For example, I was introduced to One Piece from One Piece Grand Battle for the Sony PlayStation. I got into Naruto because of Naruto Ultimate Ninja for the Sony PlayStation 2. For the most part, I was more of a video game nerd than I am an anime otaku. There is, however, one anime series that I really got into because I watched the first few episodes on TV. I've said it on record multiple times on this channel. I am a fan of InuYasha. InuYasha was the first long-running anime series that really got me hooked in. It's an anime about a middle school girl named Kagome who accidentally got transported into feudal Japan, and then she met a half-dog demon named InuYasha. Then the story progressed where InuYasha and his friends must collect shards of the sacred jewel and fight demons in order to stop a bad guy in a monkey mask. Some consider InuYasha as the original isekai anime, although the concept that InuYasha used wasn't something new at the time. Prior to InuYasha, other anime series had stories about a schoolgirl protagonist transported to a different world and fell in love with the male lead. The ones that popped out for me are The Visions of Escaflowne and Fushigi Yugi. If you want to go even further, the author of InuYasha, Takahashi Ruiko, created a story back in 1985 called Fire Tripper. This anime is essentially prototype InuYasha. Despite the popularity of InuYasha, there are not a lot of video game adaptations, especially comparing to other popular anime series at the time such as One Piece and Naruto. Most of the InuYasha games that existed are somewhat mid in terms of quality. The only reason I could enjoy most of the InuYasha games is because I am a fan of the IP itself and not necessarily because of the quality. There is one game that I think is the best InuYasha game that we had. The game is called InuYasha, A Feudal Fairy Tale, a 2D fighting game for the Sony PlayStation developed by Dimps. This is a game that I constantly come back to whenever I want to revisit a solid InuYasha fighting game. Although I consider InuYasha, A Feudal Fairy Tale to be the best InuYasha game, I can't help but think the game has a lot more to be desired. Sure, for what it is, I think the game is a good 2D fighter, but if there was more being given, this game could have been a great 2D fighter. It could have introduced more gamers towards the anime itself. In this video, let's discuss the fighting game based on my favorite anime a lot deeper. I still consider this game to be a solid one and even an underrated gem in the Sony PlayStation's library. So let's take a look at the simplistic brilliance of InuYasha, A Feudal Fairy Tale. On 6th of March 2000, former video game producer of Capcom and SNK, Nishiyama Takashi founded his own company called Dimps. A little background information about Nishiyama. He was credited as the creator of Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, two of the most popular fighting game series at SNK. In turn, he was also responsible for the birth of the King of Fighters series by acting as the executive producer of the King of Fighters 94. Worth mentioning that during his time in Capcom back in the 80s, he was the director for the first Street Fighter game. Up until this day, Dimps has co-developed some of the biggest fighting game titles such as The Rumblefish, Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5, and Soul Calibur 6. Dimps is also known to have developed multiple video games based on popular anime series like the Dragon Ball Z Budokai games, the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games, Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, and My Hero Academia Battle for All. Dimps, as a developer company, is very experienced in both 2D fighting games and anime games. One of the earliest anime games that they developed was InuYasha, a Feudal Fairy Tale, published by Bandai, released in 5th of December 2002, exclusive for the Sony PlayStation. Based on the release date alone, this game came out very late on the PlayStation's lifespan. Considering InuYasha, a Feudal Fairy Tale was developed by former Capcom and SNK developers, was this game able to deliver a quality of that of any Capcom and SNK fighters? Let's discuss the gameplay of InuYasha, a Feudal Fairy Tale in this next session. Like most 2D fighting games, this game has a main mode and a versus mode. The main mode is called Feudal Fairy Tale. This is basically the story mode for InuYasha, a Feudal Fairy Tale. Before we go over the mode itself, let's observe this roster here. You only have a roster of 11 characters to play as, well, 12 if you play the versus mode. The one character that is not playable in Feudal Fairy Tale mode is Demon InuYasha. Characters that you play in the story are InuYasha, Kagome, Shippo, Kikyo, Sango, Miroku, Totosai, Naraku, Kagura, Koga, and Sesshomaru. I understand that this game came out in 2002 and the anime didn't go as far. However, I feel like the game could have used more than just 12 characters. Where is Kohaku in this game? He's a major character in the series and he's more than capable as a fighter. How come he's not in the game? Why not put other major one-off villains from the show, such as Yura, the Thunder Brothers, Urasue, and Tsubaki? I don't think the game itself is bad with the roster that it has, and it's just a minor complaint. Although, I wish the game had offered more for the roster, especially for a popular anime series at the time like InuYasha. Moving back to the Feudal Fairy Tale mode, once you have selected a character, you will get an opening scene. For the main 5 characters, InuYasha, Kagome, Miroku, Sango, and Shippo, each of their opening scene is narrated by the respective character. Meanwhile, the rest of the playable characters have the same opening scene narrated by Myoga. The Feudal Fairy Tale mode is not like your typical arcade mode. You will be thrown into this RPG-style map where you can move around to fight any opponent of your choosing. When you encounter an opponent, the character that you pick will have a dialogue with the opponent. Each character that you pick will have different dialogues with different opponents. This is the kind of details that I appreciate from a somewhat budget fighting game like this. Some of the areas in the story map are mini-games. There are 3 different mini-games in the Feudal Fairy Tale mode, which I will be discussing a little bit later in this video. Just like most fighting games, your objective is to defeat every opponent before you fight the final boss. You see the center part of the map here that has a purple barrier? Once you have defeated every opponent, the barrier disappears. As you might have guessed, this is the final stage and Naraku is the final boss. Another detail I really like about this game, when you play the story as Naraku, Kikyo is the final boss instead. Instead of Naraku's castle being protected by the purple barrier, the sacred mountain is protected by a blue barrier. It really shows how the developers attempted to adapt InuYasha faithfully. The fights in the Feudal Fairy Tale mode is not only one-on-one. In some matches, you can either fight 2 opponents at once, or have a tag team partner to fight 1 opponent. Let's talk about the core gameplay of this game. From a visual standpoint, this game reminds me a lot of The Last Blade. It's no surprise honestly, considering Dimps was a studio created by an ex-SNK producer. The same can be said about the gameplay mechanics. InuYasha, a Feudal Fairy Tale is basically The Last Blade Light. In The Last Blade, you have 4 command buttons: Light Attack, Strong Attack, Kick, and Parry. In InuYasha, a Feudal Fairy Tale, you have almost the same button commands. The only difference is that this game doesn't have a kick button. Instead, it's replaced with a special attack button. Each character has 3 different special attack moves that you can perform by pressing different buttons on the D-pad and the square button. Let's take InuYasha here as an example. Just like most 2D fighting games as well, this game has a super attack. Below the health bar, you can see the super bar. To perform the super attack, you have to press a button on the D-pad twice, then the square button. For example, InuYasha's super attack is the backlash wave by pressing down down square. Although InuYasha A Feudal Fairy Tale has a similar gameplay style as The Last Blade, unfortunately, the game does not have the same depth to The Last Blade. The combos in this game are very simplistic. For some die-hard fighting game players, the simplicity of the combat might be a turn-off for them. I personally still like how the game is played, but I do believe this game still has a lot to be desired. There are two different versus modes in this game: Versus Fairy Tale and Dream Fairy Tale. The Versus Fairy Tale mode is a one-on-one versus mode, while the Dream Fairy Tale mode is a 2-on-2 tag team versus mode. It's cool that you have a 2-on-2 tag team mode, but considering the PlayStation's limitations, every time you tag in your partner, the loading screen takes forever. Even with the small roster and the simplistic combat, I have a soft spot for this game. As an InuYasha fan, this is the closest that I can get to a great InuYasha fighting game. The game has the perfect foundation to build up a solid competitive InuYasha fighting game. That is if a developer company would like to explore such an idea. I mentioned previously that we have minigames. There are 3 different minigames that you can play. The first one is rock smashing, where the objective is to destroy a giant rock before the timer runs out. This is very similar to the car destroying minigame in Street Fighter 2, but instead of a car, you have a rock. In this minigame, Samyoshos will try to distract you from destroying the rock. Sometimes, a Samyosho will carry Shippo and you have to save him. Failure in saving him will result to losing 5 seconds of the timer. The second minigame is Flame Slashing. In this minigame, you will fight Jaken with his staff of 2 heads. Jaken will summon a giant flame with his staff. Your objective is to take out the flame and then take out Jaken himself. Just like the previous minigame, you have Samyoshos distracting you and some of them will carry Shippo. The third minigame is Poison Insect. From the name itself, you already guessed what kind of minigame this is. In this one, you have to defeat all the Samyoshos before the timer runs out. Some Samyoshos will carry Shippo, so once again, you have to save him to save the time. Just like the first minigame, this might be another homage to Street Fighter 2, where you have a barrel minigame to destroy as many barrels as you can. I mentioned that I wish the game has a larger roster. However, I do appreciate the amount of effort Dimps put in these characters. Design-wise, the 2D character sprites look fantastic. It is to be expected, once again, considering these guys were former SNK developers. Another detail I really love about this game is character interactions. Every single character in this game will have different dialogues with different characters during different occasions. For example, InuYasha will have a different pre-match dialogue against Kagome and against Naraku. This applied to every character fighting against every other character. For a roster of 12 characters, that is actually pretty impressive. Another cool addition is that you have the option to change the dialogues between characters. As you can see here, you have 5 different interactions. Example here for InuYasha, I want to change the before the match dialogue. There you can select the opponent InuYasha is interacting and then change the dialogue of your choosing. Although InuYasha A Feudal Fairy Tale is a somewhat budget game with a small roster, Dimps really attempted to maximize what they have in their resources. This is the kind of details that not only made me appreciate the game even more, but also made me come back to constantly play this game. Whenever I talk about InuYasha in general, I have to talk about the music. For the InuYasha anime, the music composer was Wadakaoru. I tell you right now, Wadakaoru is an absolute genius. I love the soundtracks that he composed in any anime series. He was also the orchestra arranger for the Kingdom Hearts series. Now, for the game, I couldn't find enough information on who composed the soundtrack. The only information I found about the music composers is from the game's Wikipedia page. So the music was composed by Kenshiro?
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
I don't know who this Kenshiro is, and I couldn't find any information about this individual. Maybe if you know who this person is, you can help me out with some information. The other composer's name is Takehiro Yuki, which not to be confused with Takehiro Yuki, the author of Shaman King. The only information I found about Take is that he was the music composer for the Kamen Rider 555 game on the Sony PlayStation 2. Quite interesting to say the least. Anyways, the soundtracks for InuYasha, A Feudal Fairy Tale are really good. They really capture the feel of Wanakaru's music in the InuYasha anime. In conclusion, the composers did a really good job with the music. I'd say the entire team at Dimps was able to capture the essence of InuYasha as a whole for this game. InuYasha, A Feudal Fairy Tale is a game that I have cherished throughout the years. InuYasha is still one of my favorite all-time anime series, and this is one game that was able to offer the most as a fan of the show. It's rather unfortunate that there are not a lot of InuYasha games exist out there, or at least the ones I genuinely enjoy. This game, though very simplistic, it was able to maximize the resource that it has. The more I played this game, the more I want to see a proper competitive InuYasha fighting game. I would love for a fighting game developer out there to explore the idea of an InuYasha fighting game. I'm just saying. So that's it for the video. What are your thoughts on InuYasha, A Feudal Fairy Tale? Have you ever played this game before? Are there any other InuYasha games that you have played? Let me know in the comment section below. With that being said, this is me, Profar. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give me a thumbs down. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, join the Profar Mokori Hunter X Discord server, and I'll see you guys in the next video.